Welcome on in, football fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS and prop preview for Thursday night football between the Cowboys and the Lions. Got ourselves two explosive offenses, a high total, and a relatively close spread as well. And excited for everything that we've got on Thursday. And here in this video, gonna get you ready for all of your exposure. But first off, a breakdown of the Draftkings side and what we're doing for our single game lineups. Then I'll include an injury report, which you got a few star names to keep an eye on from that perspective. We'll talk through ownership, correlation, getting different in the large field contest, and then afterwards go through the Underdog and the Prize Picks side with some prop exposure that I've already played for Thursday that you might want to consider tailing for yourself. So by the end, you'll have a game plan for everything for Thursday. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get this thing going. As I mentioned during the intro, we've got ourselves a close spread at only 3 points favoring the Lions and a 53.5 point over-under. So one of the higher totals that we've had of the year, expected to be quite a bit of offenses between these two teams, which makes sense given the plethora of skill position players on both sides. So we'll talk about how that'll impact ownership player by player, but overall, pretty evenly spread, maybe slightly higher ownership on some of the Detroit players just because of that 3-point spread. But unlike some of the recent spreads where it's been 7.5 points on some of these showdown slates, it's not going to be nearly as drastic. And from the lineup construction segment, that also holds as well, is going to be a ton of 3-3s, which is usually the predominant game script that you see from a lot of the field. That's going to be even more so the case when you have two explosive offenses, that high total, and it being that close. There's going to be a lot of 2 quarterback lineups, a lot of people playing 3 to even 4 wide receivers alongside with them, and you can leverage yourself off of that. If you're in some of the larger field GPPs, 50 to 100,000 plus entries, play a 4-2 in either direction, and especially a 5-1 full onslaught towards either team is going to be extremely low owned in the large field GPPs. So in my opinion, the best way to play those sort of contests is just to commit to one team or the other. But let's start with the top player, Jahmyr Gibbs at $11,000. A bit pricey, but over a 20 raw point projection, still has him at 1.8x points per dollar value. And he's getting some ownership, but the byproduct of the close spread, so many skill position guys that are playable in this game, is that ownership is extremely spread out. And you can see for pretty much all the guys that are 8K plus, a lot of them are in that 40 to 50% range, whether it's the quarterbacks. You've got Jahmyr Gibbs, elite pass catching options like a CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens in that 40 to 50% range. It's really just play your guys. There's no one that's that overly chalky they have to worry about from the lineup construction standpoint, which is kind of nice for a slate like this. But Gibbs the most pricey of the bunch, also the highest projection out of all of them. He does give contributions both as a traditional runner and as a receiver out of the backfield, so he fits a variety of different game scripts as well, whether it's them playing from ahead and getting the rushing usage in the second half, or playing from behind and perhaps getting some receptions out of the backfield. Both of those are viable strategies to get to the optimal lineup. Next up, I got both of these quarterbacks, 10.4K for Dak. You got Jared Goff at 10K flat. Both fair price tags, a little bit of a better price for Jared Goff at 1.9x points per dollar value, but both of them are worthy of being 40 to 50% owned. And I would say that of the skill position guys towards the top, that these quarterbacks might be my favorites of the bunch, just because they have the highest floor, especially in cash/single entries, where you don't have to have the absolute nuts to take stuff down. They're players that I'm jamming in as much as humanly possible, but as we mentioned with the game script, that is going to be by far the most popular script that we see played. So I'm personally tuning a little bit more of my exposure for Thursday towards the single entries and cash lineups, where I don't have to worry about that ownership as much. If you do have conviction towards the Cowboys or even towards the Lions side in that 4-2 or 5-1 fashion, the GPPs could be a good way to go out there and exploit that, but that's not personally how I'm breaking this down. I agree with the high total. I'm not sure whether it's going to be the Cowboys and the Lions that wins. I would be kind of shocked to see it be a 3 or 4 touchdown game, but we've seen crazier stuff happen this year. But both of these quarterbacks, they fit that close competitive script quite well, and because I'm sold on them, I am going to be looking at some of the smaller field contests as a result. Next up, we got Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's the big piece of injury news that we had heading into Thursday. As of right now, he said he's not sure if he's going to play, and given that he's such a tough guy, normally saying that he's going to go out there and sweat it out and play through injuries, that puts a lot of doubt on whether he's going to play for Thursday. So $9,800, I currently have him projected as playing, but maybe a bit limited if he's going to be out there. But I would say that there's a really good chance that he's rolled out, and based on some of the sportsbook lines that we're seeing for this game, guys like Jameson Williams have like an 80.5 reception yard line on some of the sports books. They're assuming that he's likely going to be missing the game. So that's a piece of news that we'll have to be really keeping a close eye on. If he's out, that's going to lead to slightly inflated ownership for some of these quarterbacks. quarterbacks, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, probably pick up 2.5, maybe 3% ownership apiece at that flex position. But I currently, with that limited usage and the lower projection, only have them for about 20% combined ownership. So it's not going to be a drastic impact, just a little bit of a difference to maybe those 4 guys that are priced around him. And of course, guys, download these sheets with all the up-to-date projections, accounting for all the different pieces of injury news that are going to drop over the next few days. Make sure to check out my Patreon page. The NFL DFS tier is how you get access to everything that you're seeing on here. Not only all the projections as they morph and we get that sort of information, but also my entire player pool, how I'm using them in scripts. So quarterbacks, of course, using them with pass catching options. But I talk about what happens if I use a running back and captain, where I'm using defense/special teams, because you're not going to use it on a 4-2 as one of your buybacks, of course, right? It's more so in that 4-2 or 5-1 onslaught sort of lineup where you'd use a defense/special teams. I take all of that guesswork out of it, especially if you're newer to playing NFL DFS, and tell you exactly how to deploy the different options that are in my pool. So not only can you see who I'm playing, but why I'm playing them and how I'm actually deploying them into lineups. My core plays, some extra player notes over here towards the right side as well, giving you an idea of exactly what sort of usage to expect from these guys, all over there on the Patreon page. And, if Amon-Ra is rolled out, that is going to have an impact on the rest of these projections, and having access to the NFL DFS page is a really good idea in that sort of scenario. Next up, though, we got a CeeDee Lamb at $9,600, and I'm actually going to group in a George Pickens here at $9,400 as well. Only $200 between those two, and I don't even think we can say that there's a wide receiver one in Dallas anymore. There's a 1A, there's a 1B, there's a Lamb and a Pickens. Both have different roles for the offense. You have Lamb, he's been more of the PPR threat this year, still a downfield threat. I mean, CeeDee Lamb, he's a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. George Pickens, though, and I got to see this in Pittsburgh, it's not really that much of a surprise that he's having a really good year. He's a top 5 talent at the wide receiver position. Now, he's got the, mental stuff working against him. He's a little bit of a fiery competitor, but you get him on a productive offense like this, and he's going to post prolific numbers like he's done for this year. So $9,400, he actually projects slightly better than what I have on a CeeDee Lamb, but he's also the slightly higher round out of those 2 wide receivers. So I still like myself some CeeDee Lamb, still like myself some George Pickens. I will say, though, that Pickens, with the higher touchdown equity, that's most of the reason why his projection's higher here. He's got a better scoring odds on a lot of the different sports books. It's because of his jump ball ability, his ability to go out there and get those contested catches, makes him a better large field GPP play. Whereas if you're playing for the PPR aspect in single entries and cash, CeeDee Lamb might be the better option to go to. So I think it kind of depends on the outcome that you're hoping for. If you want that ceiling performance, maybe a captain play, George Pickens is the better of the two. The safer option would be CeeDee Lamb. And next up, we got Javonte Williams. He is projected to score on the sports books at -140 or more juice. So at $9,000, I think he's a pretty solid play at only about 50% ownership, because I think he should have significantly higher ownership than a Lamb and Pickens. Not only is his projection in that same range, despite being a little bit cheaper, you can see they're all at that 1.7 to maybe 1.8x mark in terms of points per dollar efficiency. But Javonte Williams is cheaper, lets you spend up for one of those quarterbacks, or maybe even a Jahmyr Gibbs on the other side of the game. And at the same time, he's got a higher floor. He's got a better chance to score than both of those players. We know he's going to be involved pretty much regardless of the script as well. We can expect 14 to 20 rushes per game, whether they're losing or they're playing from ahead. And at the same time, he's going to get a little bit of receiving usage out of the backfield as well. So at 16.2 points, he's somebody that I'll be prioritizing, in particular if he stays around this 48% combined ownership mark. Jamison Williams is looking like the play of the slate at $8,400, though. He's a 2.1x points per dollar projection, and that has to do with his sportsbook odds just skyrocketing because of the Amon-Ra St. Brown news. And as of right now, I've got him about 50% combined owned. But if we get that news that Amon-Ra is rolled out, this projection is going to go up even further than where it currently is, and the ownership could go close to maybe even 60%. And if that's the case, it's got to come from somewhere, and that could be a Javonte. That could be some of these wide receivers that we have on the Dallas side, which could make them even better options for the large field GPPs. Jake Ferguson could also have a little bit of ownership taken away there as well, but he's a whole $1,000 cheaper. So I have a feeling it's going to more so come from some of these more expensive players on the Dallas side of things. But a Jake Ferguson at $7,400, he projects well on a PPR website like we have on Draftkings. He's somebody that can get us 6 to even 10 catches in a game, and that has mostly happened when one of those top 2 wide receivers for Dallas has been out this year. But at $7,400, he's at least viable at 1.5x points per dollar value. Not somebody that I'm using in single entries or cash that often, but because he's the first player we see here, other than Amon-Ra, who's probably going to be out, but he's the first guy that we have that's sub 40-50% owned. Ownership's extremely spread out. There's not really that much leverage to be had at the top end of the board. Not to say that you're not playing almost all of those guys. In fact, of the top end of the board, if Amon-Ra's out, I'll be playing all those guys in my lineup. They're all going to at least have some exposure in my player pool. We're going to start to get your differentiation, start to really get your leverage versus the rest of the field. At least me is going to be with my middle to the bottom end of the board. So guys like Ferguson could do that for you. David Montgomery, if you have the Lions winning in an onslaught fashion, a 4-2 or a 5-1, you could use him alongside with a Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't think it's going to be as popular to use both of those running backs together, but there's been plenty of games where both of them have gone into the end zone. In fact, there's been games where both of them have gone closer, even over 100 rushing yards as well, kind of like what we had with the Texans a few weeks back. So you could keep an eye on that with Montgomery. He's still got some ownership at 33% combined ownership, but that's still 15 to 20% lower than some of the other guys that we had towards the top. We get towards the mid tier, we have both kickers here that I have about 20 to 24% combined owned. Both of them projecting decently at 1.6 to 1.7x points per dollar value, but people would rather have the skill position players in this game, and that's because of that high total, they're relatively close spread. So for example, in Isaac Tesla, I've still got him at about 22% ownership. That's assuming that Amon-Ra is going to be limited, and if Amon-Ra's rolled out, this projection is going to further go up, and his ownership's also going to inflate, like we could see on a Jameson Williams as well. They've got both defenses next, $4,000 and $3,600 respectively for the Lions and Cowboys. Only a 1.5x points per dollar projection, and I'm mostly looking at single entries in cash, so I don't think I'm going to have to go to a play that's this low owned. But if you're playing in the large field GPPs and you're playing an onslaught towards either team, like I think is the smart thing to do, if you're playing in those large field contests, then throw in a defense. Maybe pair him up with a running back captain, like we've mentioned hundreds of times during Showdown slates this year. Both of those are viable ways to get different at sub 15% combined ownership in both cases. Next up, we got a Ryan Flournoy. He's $3,400. He's played a little bit more consistently in 2025 than what we've seen for the past few years, and he's a big play threat. He's somebody that's got a lot of speed. They'll even run some, jet sweeps to him to try and get the ball in his hands. So at $3,400, extremely low floor. In fact, one of the lowest floors of anyone that we have on the slate, at only a 1.3x points per dollar value, but does fit large field GPPs. Brock Wright is currently questionable. He was either limited or missed practice on Monday. I can't quite remember, but either way was not a full participant. And if he misses the game, that could open a little bit of tight end value up, whether it be a Ross Dwelly, an Anthony Ferkser. Some of those guys would play probably 40 to 50% of snaps a piece if Brock Wright were out. But if Brock Wright plays at $3,000, he's an excellent value. He's probably going to be over a 2x points per dollar projection if he gets rid of that questionable tag. And he did miss a few games. He's been out for quite some time, so that is a true 50-50 when we get out there to Thursday. But I'm kind of hoping he plays because a Ross Dwelly is $2,800. Even if Brock Wright is out, he's not going to project very well because he's a little bit overpriced. Anthony Ferkser even is $1,600. Even if Brock Wright is out, he'll be close to a 2x points per dollar projection, but 2x towards the bottom end of the board isn't that special. We've got guys like Turpin, a little bit cheaper, who's got big play upside. He's also a kick returner / punt returner that could go for 6 points that way. By the way, if he scores, don't forget about the correlation with the Cowboys defense / special teams, as both of them would get 6 points apiece if he's able to get one of those touchdowns to the house. Tom Kennedy as well. He's the kick / punt returner for Detroit these days. You have Khalif Raymond, who's been banged up, so Tom Kennedy has been active. And not only that, Tom Kennedy made some really big plays out there on Thursday for Thanksgiving. So $2,000, don't sleep on him. He has a 1.7x points per dollar projection, so not quite as high of a floor as what you had with Turpin, but that's also leading the sub 10% ownership between flex and captain. You'd mentioned Ferkser a bit earlier, but you have Malik Davis, who's kind of been the backup for the Cowboys recently. Everyone kind of thought that was going to be Jane Blue heading into the year. He was the high draft pick. Everyone had high hopes for his future, but he's sucked. There's a reason why he hasn't been active for most of these games. So Malik Davis has been that guy recently. If they flip the script and maybe it is a Jane on Blue that's active, it would kind of be nice because he's only $200, but more than likely going to be a Malik Davis show once again. You have Luke Schoonmaker next at $1,200. He's going to be your tight end 2 for Dallas, and he plays quite a bit because he's an extremely skilled blocker. However, he likely needs a big play, maybe like a 30 to 40 yarder and a couple catches or a touchdown to get to the optimal lineup. Jalen Tolbert has seen a big step down in snaps this year. A lot of that is because of guys like Turpin, also Flournoy, earning so many more snaps compared to what you had in 2024. He's been the guy that's seen that downtick, and he's only $1,000 though, and still has a 3 raw point projection. So he's one of those pure punts towards the bottom that you could use to perhaps squeeze in a Gibbs at captain. You've got a Brevin Spanford, more of a blocking specialist, 3rd tight end for the Cowboys. You got fullback Hunter Lepke next. He, of course, could score you a 1 to 2 yard touchdown and get there that way. And Jane on Blue is more than likely going to be inactive, at least case based on some of the recent trends that we've seen, but there's a chance that if he's active and Malik Davis is out, that he could be one of the best values that we have on the slate. And the only reason for that is the fact that he's $200. Kind of like with Lepke, he's $400. That's half the reason that you'd want to use him to open up salary for the rest of your build. It's not always who you're getting with some of these punts towards the bottom end of the board. It's what you're opening up elsewhere as well. So again, to find all the up-to-date projections with some of that injury news that is bound to drop, also as the industry sentiment becomes a little bit more clear on where the ownership's going to go, make sure to check out those updates on my Patreon page via the link in the description of the video. And now for the prop and betting side of things, where I've got two props you might want to tail on Prize Picks. And this is going to be for a full 3x payout, and because the Lions are 3-point favorites, I'm playing for some slight correlation with the Detroit-led script. And although they're not expected to be dominating the game, if they're playing from ahead, they're more so controlling the clock. I really like our chances on these two props. So let's start with the George Pickens over at 5.5 receptions. Assuming the Lions are playing from ahead, that would lead to some extra passing usage for the Cowboys in the second half. And over the last few games, in particular, the last 5 games for George Pickens, he's been targeted just as much, if not more, than CeeDee Lamb in almost every single game. In fact, over that kind of a sample size, he's covered this line in all 5 of those games. And on sportsbooks, it's currently close to minus 130 in all different cases. And even some of the smaller sportsbooks like Caesars/William Hill have him at closer to minus 140 towards the over. So that would be value. We're still on a Tuesday, so this line is going to mature as we get closer to lock. But people see that recent hit rate, they see that they're underdogs, and they're likely going to pass even more. It would kind of shock me if this didn't bump even more so than what it's currently at. So we're snagging it now before any of that potential line movement, as it's something that I would expect to hit at 55 to 60% of the time. Next up, we got a Jake Bates down here at 7.5 kicking points. He's an over I'm taking on the favorite side of things, as we have a 53.5 point total, and on some sports books, he's already up at 8.5 points. And although he's juiced a little bit towards the under on the books that have him at 8.5, there's sports books that have him at 7.5, and he's minus 140 to minus 150 towards the over there. So another plus EV prop, and it leans into the kind of game script that we were mentioning before, because if the Lions are playing from ahead, that means that they're likely going to score a decent amount of points at a 53.5 point over under game, meaning that Jake Bates is going to get some points after touchdowns, maybe a field goal opportunity or two. And really what made me look towards this kind of prop and try to find the line value to begin with is Amon-Ra being banged up. If he's out, that's going to lead to slightly less efficiency in the red zone. You have Sam Laporta, who's likely out for the rest of the year. There's only so many guys that they have on offense that are viable at the skill positions that I think they're going to lock them down a bit. And it's not like I think they're going to lose. We're still playing for Detroit to be leading in this game, but maybe it's more field goals. Maybe it's not quite 53.5 points for the over-under, what it ends up being. That sort of script would be ideal for this little two-man. And it's a full 3x payout. That's kind of the cherry on top of this, is that we're getting some correlation to either spot, line value in each case as well. It's still getting the full 3x that you get for most two-man. So if you guys want to tail that, feel free to enter that over there on Prize Picks. I believe on Underdog, they don't have the Jake Bates prop up there, so that's why we're taking it on the Prize Picks side. And also the correlation rules are a little bit more lax on Prize Picks as compared to Underdog, so it's easier to get that full 3x payout. But make sure to line shop with some of the other sports books or different pick'em sites that you have available. And for all the different props that I'm playing for Thursday Night Football, there'll be more to come over the next day and a half. Make sure to check out my Patreon page for that. The NFL prop tier is how you can access to every single bet that I'm placing, whether it's on Underdog or on Prize Picks or on sites like HardrockBet and the sports books. That's what I have access to down here in South Florida. So that's the sort of kind of content that you guys can expect over there on the Patreon page. Link in the description to go out there and check it out. Alrighty guys, that is all I've got for the Thursday Night Football preview. Go ahead, smash that like button if you guys haven't already. Also, go ahead and subscribe to the channel so you guys don't miss any of the content to come. That will include our main slate preview dropping on a little bit later on this week, as well as the rest of the Showdown previews for all of the main island games. Make sure to subscribe so you get notified when all of that goes live. But other than that, go ahead and comment down below who you've got as the top scorer on the Draftkings Thursday night slate for a chance to earn a free month on my Patreon page. And as long as you're the first person to guess that player and they end up being the top scorer for the Thursday Night Football slate, you'll win a free month access to everything I have on my Patreon page. So super simple giveaway. Some of the star players are sure to go early, so make sure to lock in your player before anyone else ends up stealing them from you. That's where you guys can find all the Patreon sheets that I showed you before. That's where all the projections are, my entire player pool for Thursday Night Football. When we get that news, they will properly reflect what to expect for that game. And then on the prop and the underdog side, that's where you guys can find everything I'm playing for Thursday Night Football as well. So for access to that, give me your top score for Thursday Night Football. If you guys just want to join and you don't want to have a giveaway to give you that access, you can also find it via the link in the description of the video. But that's all I've got. I appreciate your support on the channel as per usual, everyone. Best of luck in the large GPPs with any prop exposure that you guys are entering, and let's have ourselves a Thursday.